for supporting this initiative. Please stand up on your feet and give a rousing appreciation to BIS. Please do that.
So thank you so much, and also to the entire management. Pass our appreciation.
Document that is required.
So in the case
Yes.
where
but where you are non-compliant,
yes.
where you are, I've said where you are compliant,
yes.
that process must be completed within the service level, the time agreed on by that department.
We're going to hear from your representative, who will also give us a few remarks in less than 5 minutes. And then, once he's done, we'll see your performance. So get ready, embrace yourself, whether you're going to start from there and come through. Let us know how much space you want.
One Young Africa, we say yes to one Africa market. Thank you.
What can we do to reduce unemployment? Can we be job creators rather than just job seekers?
The only business you can go into, whether you are a public figure, or public official, or otherwise, and nobody will trace you or probe you, is agriculture.
This is where the ideas of young people can begin snowballing.
We need to get into technological innovation. Since 2021, investors have thrown $940 million into technology companies in Africa. So technology is the way to go.
It is important that whatever is done at policy level is disseminated to the users or to the beneficiaries.
What is your ideal Africa that you wish to have?
Africa which supports the youth, because the youth are the innovative and they can move Africa.
An Africa driven by business, trade and investment.
It's a united Africa, one Africa by Africans and for Africans.
I want the FCFTA to be for the young people and driven by the young people.
Buy East Africa, build East Africa. That is the brand we need to put across. That is the song we should be singing as youth.
Mine it is Africa that is borderless.
I think it's important to start to aim low, to build your business, to have some experience and then be confident enough to go beyond, from your village to the next town, to the region.
East Africa is a home of close to almost 200 million people. And if you are to go and design a product, one product, however small it is, you'll be assured of 200 million people. If you are selling that product for $1, and you are able to get that market, that's the money you'll be able to make. You can make Africa the factory of the world. It is possible.
It is a great privilege to be part of this important youth event, and allow me to express his deepest appreciation to you. He's so proud of you, of what you're doing, particularly you lead and the youth present there, but also at the continental level. As we continue to nurture the young people, the young generation, we must acknowledge that they need key technical skills to become more competitive in the process of realizing the African Continental Free Trade Area, and also to encounter various challenges related to financing and ease of movement.
I like the idea of having a forum where people from all walks of life and from the various socio-economic and political backgrounds sitting together and one roof to discuss issues of common interest. The Arusha debate will seek to discuss and highlight pressing African issues which would require regional, continental, and global policy attention and action. This kind of focus of the Arusha debate is something I wholeheartedly welcome and support. A successful Arusha debate will add another significant milestone to the Arusha brand. Ladies and gentlemen, let me say that I have no doubt in my mind that you'll be able to deliver the Arusha debates as a world-class undertaking. If they could do it with Davos, you can also do it with Arusha. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, after those many words, it is now my singular honor and pleasure to declare the inaugural Arusha debates officially open. Best of luck.
AfCFTA is a tool, we could say, that looks to see how Africa could unite economically, socially, politically. So it's a grand aspiration.
Youth perspectives informed our further engagements with policymakers, especially the government and other stakeholders.
First, youth, yes, had heard about the AfCFTA, but only on the internet. And they confessed that they had not been involved or got engaged in the process before. And therefore, they were not, they would say, we have heard about the AfCFTA, but we don't know it. We cannot say it is ours.
We discovered that there was urge for more information.
One of the major recommendations and outcomes of the study is that there should be an annual AfCFTA Youth Inclusion Index to measure how youth are participating, how their knowledge and interest levels are growing.
And therefore, we had to find the young people where they are. They are on TikTok, they are on Instagram, they're on Facebook and Twitter. And this has really helped us to not only roll out the project initiatives, but also reach them where they are and allow them from all the 55 countries of Africa to participate actively in the project.
Emolot, over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Felista, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you. So, colleagues, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it's an evening. Usually this is a free time for you to relax, but we are really grateful you've made time for this amazing session. For those joining us today for the first time, this is the Independent Continental Youth Advisory Council, the AfCFTA, an initiative that, as you may already have seen, that was an outcome of a ULEAD Africa bootcamp, AfCFTA bootcamp. And in that bootcamp, it was realized that that in the implementation processes, so in the initiation processes, the AfCFTA, the issues of youth were not fully considered in the process, or youth were not meaningfully engaged in the process. But it's interesting, it's for the first time in Africa where the youth, 35 of them who were in Arusha, asked themselves, instead of what the AfC Secretariat can do for them, they asked themselves this question: what can we do to ensure that we assist the African Union, the AfCFTA Secretariat, to actually implement the AfCFTA? So it was unanimously agreed that let's establish an independent continental youth advisory council that is going to be a pinnacle or a youth body that is going to champion youth inclusion in the African continent. And hence that gave birth to what now we know as the ICOYACA or the AfCFTA Youth Advisory Council that we champion. And again, keeping the fact that the AfCFTA implementation is member state driven, we went ahead to establish chapters in several member states of the African Union. And as we speak, we have 43 chapters in each African Union member state, and we are engaging 10 youth in each member state. So currently we have about 430 youth that we are directly engaging. And that number grows because again, we have regional coordinators in each district or each province of every member state. So for example, in my country, Uganda, we have about 128 districts. So that means we have a representative in each district. So that number keeps on growing. And what is the vision? Of course, the vision is mainly to ensure that youth participation is institutionalized. Since it's member state driven, these 10 youth work with their member states to implement the AfCFTA. And the goal, of course, is to, and the mission, of course, is to mobilize the youth and empower them on the AfCFTA. So back to the topic of today. Today, we are looking at mainly the advantages and disadvantages or the pros and cons of free trade agreements. And this also, of course, comes from our youth themselves. Most of them want really to understand what this AfCFTA is. They hear about the trade agreement, but they don't have an idea of what it is. What are the advantages? Why did the African Union actually broker it? So those are the issues that raised, that influenced having this topic today. And of course, we are grateful to have a team of experts that are going to take us through this discussion. And just enjoy, feel free to ask any questions. Leave your, the team will leave the link for the Telegram joining group. If you're new to joining us this space for the first time, the team will leave the Telegram handles for you to join. So then we can actually co-opt you and distribute you to different country chapters that you belong. So thank you so much. Back to you, Felista.
Thank you so much, our chairperson, David. So if you're joining us today we are going to talk about the pros and cons of the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreements. And I'll be your moderator, of course, with the assistance with the team from the ICOYACA team. So we all know that the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement represents a major opportunity for countries to boost their growth, reduce poverty, and broaden economic inclusion, which means implementing the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement would lift at least 30 million Africans out of extreme poverty and boost the incomes of nearly 68 million others who live in less than $5 a day. So today we are privileged to have very experts from the African Union, of course, the African Free Continental Trade Agreement Secretariat, and we also have AU-EU Cooperation Hub, who is an economist, who will be with us today. And we also have someone who is a champion, who champions this topic that we're going to discuss today. We also have a lawyer, which is very vital in this topic. We are supposed to understand what are the laws and regulations that come with the African Free Continental Free Trade. So if you're joining us, please feel free. And just to take you through our schedule today. So we've already started, and ICOYACA has done its introduction. And then after that, we'll have an open pool, which will be done by Anita and Blondell, who is here with us. And after that, we'll have our speakers coming in. That is, we'll have our first speaker, who is Marie Providence, who is a gender trade expert, who will introduce herself later. And we will have trivia questions. That means we'll ask you questions about the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. That is to let us know if you're really into this topic today, because that will be very informative and will help us know where to focus more next in our series. And after that, we will have our second speaker, who is Dr. Ismaeel Tharwat, who is an economist, who will obviously introduce himself a bit later. And then we have trivia question again, and then we have the third speaker, question Q&A, and our champion will speak today. And then we have a speech, and then we'll close at around 8:45, hopefully. So welcome to our series today. And before further ado, I will welcome Anita, if she's here, or Brundell, to share with us what you're doing in the polls before we head to our speaker, who is going to be Marie. Anita, are you there?
I am, Felicia. Thank you very much. And I think we are still having the questions coordinated, but the idea is to have young people informed on the AfCFTA, but also to have a direct manner to be able to assess the impact that we're having. Are young people becoming more informed about the AfCFTA through these sessions? And so we will find a way to be able to run the poll later on in the session or on our social media. So watch out for it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anita, for that. So without further ado, I will now welcome our first speaker. And our first speaker is Marie Providence. She's a gender trade expert, as I said, and she will actually introduce herself more, because this is just briefly introducing her. So Marie, if you're here, welcome. And you'll take us through the pros and cons of African Free Continental Trade Agreement and your expertise in gender. We know how much it's really important when you talk about gender inclusion in trade and making sure that we have a 50-50 share when it comes to gender. Welcome, Marie Providence.
Thank you very much, Felicia, and good afternoon or good evening, colleagues and friends, depending on where you are. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Marie Providence Mugangu, as you said. I am a gender and trade expert within the AfCFTA Secretariat, but I also handle youth related issues. It is a privilege to be here because I am youth myself, so I'm really excited to come and discuss the African Continental Free Trade Area in length and provide all the information, clarify some of the issues that may be related to it, just also to improve the kind of engagement our brothers and sisters are going to have on the AfCFTA, and so that they can also have an idea on how they can strategically position themselves to benefit from market opportunities offered by the trade agreements. I don't know how much time I have. I will try to be as brief as possible, but I also we try to be as detailed as well as regarding the information really related to the AfCFTA. So what is the AfCFTA? The African Continental Free Trade Area, otherwise known as the AfCFTA, you will notice that other people also refer to it as AfCFTA, is one of the flagship projects of the African Union Agenda 2063. As you know, Agenda 2063 is a blueprint for attaining inclusive and sustainable development in the continent for the next 50 years. The AfCFTA aims the overall objective of the AfCFTA is to boost intra-Africa trade by providing a comprehensive and mutually beneficial trade agreement among the state parties, and it covers a number of trade-related issues, namely trade in goods and services, investment, intellectual property rights, and competition policy, just to cite a few. Of course, recently, digital trade and women and youth in trade were also included within the scope of the AfCFTA agreement. The AfCFTA agreement entered into force on the 30th of May 2019, which was yesterday. We were celebrating its anniversary yesterday, but it entered into force for the 24 countries that had deposited their instrument of ratification with the chairperson of the African Union Commission. When a country ratifies or deposits its instrument of ratification, it officially it becomes bound by the provisions of the agreement. So it's kind of that official act of binding the country to the AfCFTA agreement, and hence becoming one of the AfCFTA state parties. With regards to the level of ratification as of May 2022, 43 countries had deposited their instruments of ratification, Morocco being the 43rd AfCFTA state party. With regards to signature of the agreement, 54 out of the 55 African Union member states have signed the agreement. Eritrea is yet to sign. I'd like to also point out that the AfCFTA the establishment of the AfCFTA has followed a certain roadmap. So it's a continuous process that we are not stopping at the AfCFTA, of course. So we thought that it would be beneficial for our audience to also understand where the AfCFTA comes from. So as you would know, in 1963, the Organization of the African Unity, which is now the African Union, was founded. CFTA, of course, is strongly attached to the ideals of our folk. In 1980, African Union, of course, at the time it was member states came up with what they call the Lagos Plan of Action for the Development of Africa for the period 1980 to. And the main objective of the Lagos Plan of Action was to come up with policies and programs and frameworks to increase Africa's self-sufficiency and distant countries. In 1991, the treaty establishing the African Economic Community by member states, and of course the treaty actually lays down the roadmap. And of course, in 2018, which is one of the milestones of the agreement establishing the AfCFTA, was in Nairobi, in Kigali, Rwanda, and in 2019, of course, by the entry into force of the agreement had been signed by 54 AU member states. So now, what is the roadmap of the continental integration in Africa? Like I said, there's a specific roadmap that leads not only to the economic integration of the continent, but also its political integration. And this is laid down in the treaty establishing the African Economic Community. The treaty was adopted on the 3rd of June 1991 and entered into force on the 20th of May 1994. So the Abuja Treaty, and I invite you to look into it, is quite interesting, but because it lays out a detailed and time-bound schedule for African economic and political integration through a number of stages, mainly 6 of them. So according to the treaty, from 1994 to between 1994 and 1999, member states were meant to have established and strengthened African economic communities. So far, I'd like to inform you that the African Union recognizes 8 regions. Between the period 2000 and 2007, member states were meant to have eliminated tariff and non-tariff barriers within the. In the period 2008 to 2017, the regs were meant to have established free trade areas and also customs union in regs. And of course, that's a bit of the AfCFTA, the African Continental Free Trade Area. Between 2018 to 2019, member states are meant to have established a continental level customs union with a common external tariff, which would mean that all the entire continent will be negotiating as one with regards to third parties who are not members of the of the customs union. From between the period 2020 to 2023, an African common market is meant to be established, which promotes the movement of factors of production and the free movement of people, and of course the right of establishment. And between the period 2024 to 2028, a Pan-African Economic and Monetary Union is meant to be established that also includes the establishment of an African central bank and a single African currency. So this is a chart that gives you the steps that need to be taken in order to achieve the ultimate, integration, the political and economic integration of the continent in the form of the African Economic Community. I will not. I've gone into details. This is just to give you an idea of how it's meant to happen. Then I will also like to discuss the key milestones of the AfCFTA itself. So in 2012, the Assembly of Heads of States and Government of the African Union decided to establish the African Continental Free Trade Area with the view to accelerating the integration of the continent. In 2018, as I said, the agreement was open for signature and was signed by 44 countries initially. In May 2019, the AfCFTA agreement entered into force. On the 7th of July 2019, the AU Assembly launched the operational phase of the AfCFTA, and during that launch, a number of supporting instruments and tools were also launched to support the implementation of the AfCFTA itself. The Assembly of Head of State and Government of the AU in 2021 launched the start of trading for the 1st of January 2021. So technically, from the 1st of January 2021, AfCFTA state parties were meant to start trading within the framework of the AfCFTA. As of 2022, we are currently concluding all outstanding negotiations of phase 2 issues, which I will go into, and so that trade could begin efficiently within the continent with the One Africa market. Now, what are some of the key objectives of the AfCFTA? There are quite a number, but the first one, the objectives are laid out in Article 3 of the Framework Agreement, which I invite you to also, peruse. It's a very interesting document. And the first objective is to create a single market for goods and services facilitated by the movement of persons, and of course, in order to deepen the economic integration of the continent. The second objective is to create a liberalized market for goods and services through successive rounds of negotiations. I'd like to point out that these initial negotiations are not going to be the only negotiations that will happen. They can, like I said, there would be successive rounds, depending on the changing realities once countries begin trading. The third objective is to contribute to the movement of capital and natural persons and facilitate investment, building on the initiatives and developments within regional economic communities. The fourth is to lay down the foundation for the establishment of a continental customs union at a later stage. The fifth one, which is quite interesting and is more pertinent to women and youth, is to promote and attain sustainable and inclusive socioeconomic development, gender equality, and structural transformation of its state parties. The AfCFTA also aims to enhance the competitiveness of its state parties' economies within and outside the continent. The AfCFTA aims to promote industrial development through diversification and the development of regional value chain, agricultural development, and food security. And lastly, the last general objective is to resolve the challenges of multiple and overlapping memberships, and of course to expedite the regional and the regional integration processes of the continent. As to the scope of the AfCFTA, it's important to also understand the structure of the AfCFTA agreement itself. So you have what we call the framework agreement that lays down the general rules regarding to the AfCFTA. Now, the AfCFTA also contains a number of protocols that regulate specific issues related to trade. So you have a protocol on trade in goods, a protocol on trade in services, a protocol which I'd like to point out. Trading goods and trading services are what we call phase 1 issues. And these protocols have a number of annexes. I don't know if I have enough time to go into it, but I will try, because it's important for you to understand the content of the agreement itself. So the protocol of trading goods has 9 annexes. It's quite comprehensive. So you have an annex on tariff concessions, rules of origin, customs cooperation, and a mutual excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
We can hear you, and you have 2 minutes, Marie.
Really? Oh my word. Okay, so I will not go into the annexes of the trading goods. So you also have trading services that have specific annexes. You also have a protocol for the rules and procedures for the settlement of disputes within the framework of the AfCFTA. Now, phase 2 issues cover Other, issues other than trading goods and services that are related, of course, this include investment, competition policy, intellectual property rights, digital trade, women and youth in trade, and of course you have the AfCFTA adjustment fund. As to the institutional structure, oh my word, this is very long, but I'll try. You have, of course, organs that have been put in place for purposes of monitoring of the implementation, the administration, facilitation, the monitoring and evaluation of the AfCFTA itself. So you have the Assembly, which is the highest organ within the AfCFTA structure. It's composed of heads of state and governments of the African Union, and its main objective is to provide oversight and strategic guidance on the AfCFTA. The Council of Ministers is composed of ministers responsible for trade. The Committee of Senior Trade Officials is made of permanent principal secretaries, and of course you have the Secretariat, which is what we call the AfCFTA Secretariat. One of the key functions of I'd like also to point out that we also have what we call a dispute settlement body, which will deal with all disputes arising from the AfCFTA agreement between the AfCFTA state parties. The overall role of the Secretariat is, of course, to support AfCFTA state parties in the implementation of the AfCFTA and to support the negotiations of all the issues that are meant to be covered under the AfCFTA. Now, what is the state of play of negotiations? I believe that for purposes of transparency, which is one of the key principles of the agreement, it's important for you to know where we are and what we are doing. So as of April 2022, the AfCFTA agreement, like I said, was ratified by 43 EU member states. With regards to trading goods, we have 45 schedules of tariff concessions that have been received, and the rules of origin have been negotiated at 87.7%. Some of the pending issues that still need to be settled or negotiated are automotive, the textile and clothing, sugar, and tobacco. With regards to trading services, we have also received about 46 schedules of specific commitment in the 5 priority sectors. With the negotiations on phase 2 issues, investment, IPR, and competition policy are currently ongoing, and additional instruments are going to be negotiated, namely a protocol on digital trade, and of course, women and youth in trade. So one of the key questions that you might ask yourself then is, are women and youth covered under the AfCFTA? I would like to say yes. Accordingly, of course, you have one of the key general objectives of the AfCFTA, which is to create an inclusive and integrated market where all traders, including women and youth, are able to benefit from opportunities created under the AfCFTA. And the agreement contains specific provisions that also relate to the AfCFTA. I talked about Article 3 of the Framework Agreement, but you also have the Protocol on Trading Services, whose aim is to harness the potential and capacities of African services suppliers, in particular at the micro, small, and medium levels. And we know that most women and youth are actually concentrated at that level. And the idea is to help them or to promote them, so that they can engage in regional and global value chains. You also have Article 27 of the Protocol on Trading Services, that under which AfCFTA state parties undertake to mobilize resources and implement measures with a view to improving the export capacity of both formal and informal service suppliers, with particular attention to micro, small, and medium-sized women and youth service suppliers. Are there special arrangements for women and youth under the AfCFTA? In addition to the legal commitments made under the different protocols in the Framework Agreement, you also have key decisions of the highest decision-making body or organ of the African Union and AfCFTA regarding women and youth specifically. So the Assembly first committed to broaden inclusiveness in the operation of the AfCFTA through specific interventions that would support young Africans, women, and small medium-sized enterprises, as well as integrating informal traders into the formal economy by implementing simplified trade regime. And to concretize or to consolidate or solidify, if you like, this commitment, the Assembly decided to include in the protocol on women and youth in trade within the scope of the AfCFTA agreement. So what are some of the key issues that relate to youth and the AfCFTA, especially with regards to the protocol? The protocol presents a very unique opportunity for AfCFTA state parties to create a trade ecosystem that allows women and youth to leverage market opportunities offered by the AfCFTA and to translate some of the proposed solutions that the youth and women will provide into an innovative legal framework and a practical one, of course, that seeks to advance further the objectives, the inclusiveness objective of the AfCFTA. It is important to note that, of course, the negotiations of the protocol on women and youth in trade will begin very soon. The Council of Ministers has established the negotiating structure, the Committee on Women and Youth in Trade, under whose auspices the protocol will be negotiated. So is the protocol finalized? Not yet, but the inaugural meeting of the committee will be launched in the coming months. And of course, all negotiations have to be concluded within the deadline that has been set by the AU Assembly. Now, how does the AfCFTA benefit women and youth-led enterprises? It's a fact, in fact, that women and youth-led SMEs are key to the economic growth of the continent. Studies have shown that they account for about 90% of businesses on the continent, and they employ about 60% of workers, many of whom are women and youth. So women, but it is also recognized that youth-led businesses also have difficulties penetrating markets within and outside the continent. So how does the AfCFTA assist? The AfCFTA offers the youth the opportunity to strategically position themselves to tap into regional export destinations and can use regional markets as stepping stones for expanding into overseas markets. And by overseas markets, we mean markets outside the African continent. By opening the continental market, of course, the AfCFTA enables youth-led enterprises to offer their products and services at a wider, market, which means that's expanding the customer base of these enterprises and increasing revenue. The expansion, of course, of customer base means that there would be an increased demand for sophisticated, or what we call value-added goods and services. And then, which means that if there's an increased demand of sophisticated or value-added goods, the AfCFTA will assist by improving, of course, the access to inputs. So youth-led enterprises are able to add value to the goods and services that they provide, because then it would be easier and cheaper to get inputs within the continent. Getting inputs at a cheaper price also reduces production costs, and by reducing production costs, one is these youth-led enterprises are able to offer their goods, the goods and services that they produce at a competitive price. So as you can see, the AfCFTA ultimately end up also promoting diversification or value addition of products. That's make the youth more competitive on the market. It also allows the integration of youth.
Wind up, Marie, because of time.
Yes, I'm almost done. Thank you. Yeah. It also allows youth-led enterprises to be integrated into value chains, in the sense that they can easily supply to larger companies that then export into the external market. Wow. So there are a lot of things to say about the AfCFTA, but one more thing that I'd like to say is that it is contemplated that the AfCFTA will a simplified trade regime will also be implemented at the AfCFTA level, and the simplified trade regime would increase the level of trade by youth, because then it provides for simplified clearance procedures alongside reduced import duties. So the SCR, I'd like to point out that it is already implemented at the regional in some regional economic communities. So it's something that just needs to be escalated. I don't know where to begin, but yes, basically, what are some of the key priority areas of the Youth Decade Plan of Action within the framework of the AU? You have education and skills development, youth employment and entrepreneurship, governance, peace and security, youth health and sexual reproductive health rights, agriculture, climate change, and the environment. So as I would like to say, there are a lot of strategies and and policies that are being developed to support youth and maximize their chances of taking advantage of the AfCFTA. So what needs to be done? African countries should develop policies that help young people produce goods. So you shift from exporting raw materials to actually adding value to your products and exporting them in other countries. Of course, African countries are now in a position to allocate funds through their country's budget to enable young people to engage in the production of indigenous products from Africa. And a national coordination implementation on the ground is also key to delivering the expectations of the AfCFTA. In some instances, of course, the agreement also explicitly provides for, arrangements that would facilitate implementation, meaning the creation of some committees, the fact that it also provides for some of these committees, of course, need to be diverse in their membership. And there could be an advocacy being made to ensure that youth enterprises are also part of these committees. How much time do I have left? Or have I exhausted my time already?
You have no time left.
All right. So I am so sorry. There's a lot to say about the AfCFTA, but I hope that within the short time that I have been allocated, I've been able to inform you, to enlighten you more about what the AfCFTA is and where the opportunities lie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marie. And in case you just joined us, that was Marie Providence, and she's a gender trade expert from Africa Free Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat in the African Union. And she has shared the milestone of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and what are the advantages, what are the benefits, especially knowing that the Africa Free Continental Free Trade Area is an ambitious trade pact to form the world's largest free trade area by connecting almost 1.3 billion people across the 54 African countries. As you were speaking, I know there's a lot you really wanted to share with us, but somebody actually asked me during your presentation, what is the free trade agreement ability to improve economic efficiency? Is free trade really fair? And how can it be a reconciliation of offering interests, especially when you find that more developed economies have to deal with small and less developed economies. And the question becomes, how will the infant sectors be protected to ensure that there's continuity in the growth once the respective countries starting trading actually with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area? So with all that you've talked about, what do you have to say about economic efficiency in terms of developed countries and the infant economies? Is it really fair to these countries, Marie?
That's a very interesting question, and thank you so much for asking it. It's important to put that question in context. You need to look at the level of the volume of trade that is taking place between African countries. It's important to note that most trade that happens on the continent is mainly between African countries and the rest of the world. And when you look at the product setup, it's normally raw materials being exported, and then we import raw material. So with that in mind, yes, there's always a fear that, yes, there would be losers and winners, because the understanding is that bigger markets are going, the countries that are more developed would be able to benefit more. But I'd like to say that everybody stands to gain, right? Because then again, what is important in order to gain is to make sure that, yes, there's an industry that is developed. There's an industry that is vibrant, and even if it's not vibrant, trade what you have. And of course, like I said, once you have access to inputs from other African countries at a cheaper price, you are able to add value. When you add value, you are able to sell your products at a much more expensive price. And yes, you are able to do it in a much bigger market. So I'm saying that, let's say for the short term, yes, they would be enormous as to, handicap the country in any way. And in any case, I'd like to point out that an adjustment fund has been put in place to ensure that, the impact of opening the market is alleviated, is not felt too heavily by African countries. So this is something that is already provided for. As for infant industries, that's a very good point. You know, the idea is if you flood the market with, the understanding is that some of the existing industries within the country and that are not well developed would be killed. But the AfCFTA takes that into consideration, and the agreement actually makes provisions for countries to protect their infant industries. So it's not that you are just arbitrarily opening everything. Countries will also have to be very strategic as to what they are opening and how they are opening it. With regards to small countries, when it comes to implementation, there's an implementation timeline, right, which is not the same for all countries. So for instance, when it comes to non-sensitive products that make the bulk of products that need to be traded under the AfCFTA, the timeline for implementation is, I believe, 10 years for non-least developed countries, African developed countries, and it's 13 years for least developed countries. So you see smaller countries are also taken into account in the sense that implementation would take a longer time than others. So that by that time, by those 13 years, it is assumed that you'll have prepared your market, you know, so that you can start trading within the AfCFTA. I hope I answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marie. I know there are people who have just joined us. Just before I welcome Anita for the trivia question, I would really love to request everybody who has joined us today to tell us, to write on their names during the Zoom meeting. What's their name, where are they from, and which country, which town and country are they from, so that we know who we are sharing this information to. And I hope this information will be rather be modified and amplified to other countries that haven't joined us today. So in case you just joined us, please just write your name, the city you're from, and the country that you are in, so that we can enjoy this conversation together. So thank you so much, Marie. It was so informative, especially understanding the milestone and actually understanding one thing you said about actually Africa Free Continental Trade Area. You have to be strategic, because there are so many things that people are asking, especially the person that asked about the infant, small countries, developed countries, and underdeveloped countries. Thank you so much, Marie. So Anita, are you there?
If I may just add one more thing with regards to some protection. It's just I want to make sure that it is well understood also that in addition to giving least developed countries more time to implement the AfCFTA, there are a number of products that are called sensitive products that will not be open, you know, to the AfCFTA. Those are excluded from the AfCFTA framework. And of course, those excluded products will be, it's up to the country to decide what are some of these products that are too strategic for the country for them to open, you know, for them to liberalize them. So, and of course, that list of excluded products will be reviewed every 5 years, but it's a possibility. So you're not opening up completely. You are also given room, let's say, as a small country. What are some of the products that I can liberalize? Fine. What are some of the products that I cannot liberalize? Because if it would be disadvantageous for me. So the AfCFTA takes care of everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Felista, come.
Go ahead, because I had already invited Anita, and I was saying thank you to Marie for such an informative speech or keynote that she has given us about the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. Anita, if you're there, could you please go ahead?
Thank you, Felista. So, and thank you very much, Marie, for that very informative session. So we're going to just go into a brief trivia session just to test our knowledge to see how much we know about the AfCFTA. This is going to be very simple, just a bit of a wind down before we head into the next part of our session this evening. So feel free to either type in the chat or just raise your hand and we will pick you and you can just give us the answer. All right. Okay, so our first question for the evening is, who is the Secretary General of the AfCFTA? You can raise your hand or type the answer in the chat space. Okay, I see Peter Ngomba has an answer in the chat space. He says the Secretary General of the AfCFTA is Mr. Wamkelem. All right, thank you, Peter. And I think we got it on the very first try. The Secretary General of the AfCFTA is His Excellency Wamkelem. All right, I think we're off to a great start. And the second question is, where are the AfCFTA located? And I think the person who cannot answer this question is, she's probably there. Okay, so many answers in the chat space. Peter Ngomba again, Ahmed, we also had some answers before all the other ones. And it's great to see that all of you have the right answer the first try. Let me just shout out some more. Madeline as well had the answer. So if you check the chat space, you will already know that the AfCFTA Secretariat offices are located in Ghana. All right, second last question. When did trading under the AfCFTA begin? And this was actually in Ms. Providence's presentation. Okay, I see 2013. From Anastasia, I see Confidence said 2019. Is there any other answer? Okay, just for the sake of time, Confidence and Edward Jacobo have this one. Trading started in 2019 in the AfCFTA. Well done. I see Virgin as well had that one. Last one for the evening is, oh no, this is the second last one.
If I may, Anita, a point of correction. The start of trading under the AfCFTA began on the 1st of January 2021.
Oh, okay. Yes. So that's a good one. All of us had that one a bit off the mark.
I wouldn't say so. I mean, yes, the agreement entered into force in May 2019, but the start of trading began in 2021.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Marie, for that distinction. So the trading in 2021 and the agreement going into force in 2019. So maybe Jacobo may have gotten that one right. So question 4, how many countries have ratified so far? How many countries have ratified so far? This was one of the first statements in Miss Marie's. Okay, 54, 36, 54, 52, 36. 54. Okay, for the sake of time, we're going to just go into the answer. And 43 countries have ratified so far, with Morocco being one of the most recent ones. Okay, thank you guys. Well done as well, because I see very many correct answers in the chat. Bless Mohodzi, thank you for your answer. It's one of the correct ones. And the last question for the evening, before I hand it back to Felista, is what is the payments and settlements system, or by the acronym PASS?
Anita, also just an addition, it should be Pan-African. So call it Pan-African Payments and Settlement System.
All right, so what is the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System? Okay, thank you, Mr. Ivan Atiambe, for the clarification. And I think he's also one of the ones who can't give us the answer for this one because he already knows it. Okay, any answers in the chat space? Let's see. Okay, so there's also a clarification in the chat. So there's a difference between the countries that have signed the agreement and those that have ratified it. And from the presentation by Ms. Marie, the 43 that have ratified are the ones that are now bound by the agreement and its provisions. But there are 54 that have signed and 43 that have ratified. Okay, who knows what the Pan-African payments and settlement systems is? Okay, I think I saw an answer. And then we can move on. So Toto Sebit says it's a financial platform that supports 3 core functions: instant payment, pre-funding, and net settlement. It's a payment system for intra-Africa trade. Okay, so those are interesting answers. Let's see what our answer is. Right, so the Pan-African payments and settlement system is a cross-border financial market infrastructure enabling payment transactions across Africa. And the source for this was Busola Ero, the cable. And I think our last one again is, what does the 90 to 10 rule mean? What does the 90 to 10 rule mean? I see Miss Marie has a hand raised. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Anita. So regarding the payment and settlement system, just to clarify what it is, yes, you're right. It's a platform that promotes intra-Africa trade transactions, but it enables countries, traders to use African currencies to trade within the continent. So you don't actually have to use foreign currencies like the US dollars or the pound in order to trade across borders. You can use the Ghana cedis to pay for goods or services that you are receiving, you are purchasing from South Africa. You don't have to convert it into dollars. That's what the Pan-African payment and settlement system does.
And that's definitely amazing. I
don't know who is the host. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that clarification as well, Marie. I think and it's very interesting. I think the continent champion might need to have us have a conversation about that specifically so that we get into the intricacies. Okay, the final thing, 90 to 10 rule, what is it? And don't you just love this trivia session, because we're getting so much more clarification on a number of issues. Any answers? The 90 to 10 rule. Okay, let's see if we have any hands raised. None as yet. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and give us the answer for this one. All right, so the 90 to 10 rule. Oh, we have a, okay. I think I can cover this for a moment and have Linda tell us. Linda, please go ahead.
Sorry, mine was a previous hand. I just wanted to clarify on the PAPS one. PAPS is under the operational instruments of FCFTA. There are 5 of them, rules of origin being one, online tariff negotiation portal being the second one, the Continental online mechanism for monitoring, reporting, and elimination of NTVs is the third. PAPS then comes fourth. Then we have the African Trade Observatory online platform. So it's not a standalone thing, but it's under the operational instruments of FCFTA.
All right, nicely put, Linda. I think you can also type it out in the chat space or tweet it as well, so that the conversation doesn't stay within the meeting, and we can have the information that we are receiving also be passed along to all our other people. So is it an international trade rule or has only to do with Africa? So to Mohammed, yeah, this one is about the AfCFTA in general. And I see Marie still has her hand up. Please go ahead.
Perhaps I can provide some clarification after this answer is you've managed with this answer. Yeah, that's okay.
All right. Okay. So let's see what answer we have and what our expert has in store as an addition. So the 90-10 rule in the AfCFTA is that there's no tariff on 90% of goods. 10% of goods are exclusive and sensitive, and the members can protect. And I think I remember in Miss Marie's presentation, she did highlight something about this, that even within the free trade, there are going to be certain concessions that are aside. Marie, I think you can add something briefly before we hand it back.
Thank you. So just to clarify how the tariff liberalization schedule is meant to happen. So 90%, the 90% is relates to liberalization of non-sensitive products, which make the bulk of products that are supposed to be covered under the AfCFTA. And there's a timeline, a specific timeline within which AfCFTA state parties are meant to be liberalizing, those products. Then you have 7% that we call sensitive products, right? So these are products that would be liberalized within a longer period of time, right? I believe that I'll have to check again but it's different for non-least developed countries and least developed countries. And the criteria to determine what a sensitive product is, there's a criteria that has been developed as well, so that it is not arbitrarily selected. And basically the overall importance of that product to the economy of that country would determine whether or not it's a sensitive product. Then you have 3% that are called that cover exclusive products. Those products will not be covered under the AfCFTA and therefore do not have to be opened within the AfCFTA framework. So the framework is 90, 7, and 3 to come to 100%.
So that's an even more intricate breakdown. Thank you so much, Miss Marie, for all those clarifications. And I'd like to turn it back to Felicia. Thank you very much for all your participation in the trivia session. Well done.
Thank you so much, Anita. That has been interesting just to know what Marie had shared with us and what people really know. And it's one of the sessions that makes this discussion more live and more interactive. Thank you so much, Anita. So I'm going directly to our second speaker, and I had introduced him before. He is Dr. Ismaeel Tharwat. I hope that's the correct pronunciation. And he is an economist, specifically business cluster, AU-EU Cooperation Hub. Joseph Owino, could you please mute yourself? Thank you. We have a lot to learn from AU-EU when it comes to the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. So I will not waste too much time. Welcome, Dr. Ismaeel. Joseph Owino, could you mute yourself? Thank you. Welcome, Dr. Ismaeel Tharwat, to this series as we discuss the pros and cons of the Africa Free Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. Welcome.
Thank you, Felicitas, for this lovely introduction, and it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. It's so nice to see people from all over Africa and the world. Really, what a pleasure. And also, I'd like to thank David for the invite, for a chance to speak with you and listen and really learn a lot also about your perception and the latest updates from your perspectives. Would you like me to share? I prepared a very small, brief PowerPoint. Should I share it? Okay. Can the host can you allow me to screen share, please?
Anita, could you please allow him to share his screen?
Certainly, working on it.
Yeah.
It won't be too long, but I feel like sometimes it helps to have a little visual also, just to guide the thought process a little bit. And so, yeah, I hope it won't be.
Just go ahead, Tharwat.
All right, excellent. Thank you. Cool. So can you see my screen now?
Sure.
Yeah? All right.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right, full screen mode. Can you still? All right.
We can see it.
All right, great. So it's a very important topic to discuss today because the Africa Free Trade Agreement is stemming from this very big movement of globalization, and hence Africa needs to evolve and adapt to the new settings and also into the recent shocks that we've seen in the world related to the COVID-19 pandemic and also some big disasters happening, especially related to the different war train. And so as a result, how does Africa deal with this situation in the new context of globalization? And so globalization has had a very large impact over the past decades. And we've seen from an economic point of view, international trade really expand since 1970 from 27% of global GDP to 56%, which is a very big number. We've also seen a very important movement of China being integrated into the global economy, which has also stimulated lots of questions related to import competition. Should we be trading with all these countries? Should we not? And what are the impacts of that? And so before I dive into the benefits and the cons, maybe if we take a step back and just ask ourselves, why actually do countries trade in general? Like, what is the thought process behind that? And, there are a few simple things. Countries really like to trade because they hope to have a significant impact on economic growth, which usually leads to better welfare for the citizens of its country. It also allows countries to specialize in their specific advantage so that they can make the most of their own potential as a country and their resources and their skill sets. It also has a strong impact on wages and household incomes, which then also fuels the overall welfare of a country and the economy, and it affects poverty levels. And as we know, in Africa, we're dealing with very high levels of poverty. And so one of the biggest goals is poverty eradication. So in that sense, we're looking to have and hope to have trade to impact all of these things in a positive way. So what could be the possible benefits of such a free trade agreement? And we have a couple of studies that actually go into depth about this. So you have the UN Economic Commission for Africa, and it estimated that this type of agreement could potentially boost intra-Africa trade by 52% by eliminating import duties and the elimination of non-tariff barriers. So you see that this will allow African countries to trade much more with each other, already something that is very important for the content and also for economic growth for every one of the member states. Also, another study by the UN, the UNCTAD in 2018, it had two scenarios where we look at full elimination of tariffs and partial elimination of tariffs. And what they found is that in both long-term scenarios, we expect... Yes.
Sorry, your slide is still on the first page. I think it's not moving. Sorry.
Oh, okay. 1 second. Let me try to stop share and then I'll reshare. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. Can you see now?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, okay, great. So yeah, going back to the benefits. So we see the UNCTAD also had a study about how the African Free Trade Agreement could benefit and what would be the long-term prospects if we had full elimination of tariffs and if we had partial. And so the first thing they found in the long-term scenarios, we have a large employment growth rate, specifically in the manufacturing industry, followed by services and agriculture. And that's very important because Africa has the largest youth population in the world and has a very high unemployment rate amongst youth. So in order to tackle that problem, we must put in place such agreements, and this could play a role in improving that. And on the other hand, they found that all sectors grow. So with the exception of the mining sector, you're seeing that there's an expansion in overall size of these sectors, which means more employment, more revenue, more income, and hence overall improving the overall welfare of African countries. So very concretely, from an economic point of view, this is what we can expect to achieve or hope to achieve. Now, the question we ask is, this sounds very rosy, and are there any pitfalls along the way? This might be too good to be true. And certainly, as with everything in life, it's not black and white. And there are a few things that we need to take care of. And one of the first ones that we need to be aware of is this idea of non-inclusive growth. So while Africa and African countries were pushing for deeper structural transformations and having greater cooperation with each other, and we're seeing that these free markets are actually producing growth and opportunities, we must make sure that doesn't go to a very narrow elite, and it must touch the overall populations, and we must avoid corruption and to control any illicit behavior which may allow the benefits of this type of trade agreement to go to waste. So that's one thing. Another thing is that we must be aware of destroying local innovation. So when we open up our economies and in terms of liberalization, this naturally invites a lot of competition from our neighboring countries. And when these neighboring companies then are allowed to compete, they can also, while they bring in good services and activities, they can also potentially hamper or even crowd out what we call local companies and innovators. Local companies or innovators might not be able to compete. They don't have the resources or the skills or the technology, and hence they might be wiped out. So that is one of the risks of this type of liberalization. And that doesn't mean that this agreement cannot be in place, but it must mean that this is one of the things that we must be aware of. Finally, the last thing I'd like to mention here is that we also must be sure to minimize capital flight. You know, it's in order to make sure that we benefit the most from this African free trade agreement, we need to make sure that we pour in the investments into the right places in the countries and in different sectors. And that means we can't have capital or money flowing out of the country. We need to make sure to do our best to keep it inside the country, inside Africa, reinvesting it in infrastructure and human capacity building and improving the economic circumstances of the African economies in the African countries. And at the moment, the United Nations says that the capital flight from Africa exceeds aid to the continent by around 40 billion a year, which means that Africa is actually net negative into the amount of money flowing in. We need to keep that money here in Africa. We need to be reinvesting it into capabilities in order to make the most of this type of free trade agreement. Okay, so if you allow me briefly, I'll say what is the way forward. And so we ask, what is necessary? What can we do? So number one, we can actively manage the levels of openness. What that means is that countries, they need to build up their domestic industries, and this will require technology transfers, investment in education, and also tax barriers, to protect local companies. And they have to protect and nurture these infant industries, and even demand the technology transfer from foreign companies in order to help these young industries grow and to allow the manufacturing sector to thrive and to reach the potential and the benefits that we expect to from such a trade agreement. We also must support African institutions, and that includes all democratic institutions, whether civil society, election commissions, the media, parliaments, independent bodies, and especially universities, which are also really the hotbeds of innovation and activism, which spurs positive economic growth and activity. And lastly, we need to encourage innovation, and encouraging innovation means to build out the innovation ecosystem, to encourage our youth to mobilize them, to help them with capacity building, to train them, to provide educational resources in order to drive the long-term economic growth. My specific expertise is in innovation, and in order to really drive long-term economic growth, innovation is regarded as the key important factor when it comes to long-term economic growth. Fourth, we need to prioritize investment in sectors with comparative advantage. Certainly not all countries are the same. And as such, countries need to look to strengthen their strengths and to make use of what they have in their own countries with their resources to build African businesses which have the potential to trade regionally and eventually globally. Lastly, we need to also make sure to build out regional value chains. So that means that we need to benefit from such a trade agreement to allow economic cooperation and building bridges throughout the continent, and having different countries specialize in different areas of the value chain. And when collaborating together, this can allow each country to provide more value added to increase the overall return on investment and effort. And by bringing these diverse skills together, we can produce more valuable products and services. So thank you. I hope it wasn't too long, and thank you for the opportunity to share this with you.
Thank you so much, Ismaeel. As an economist, I know how much the Africa Continental Free Trade Area is important to you. I know there's so many questions that people ask about this, especially when it comes to the economic dependency and all, especially for developed and non-developed developing countries, sorry. So somebody actually asked, when you're talking about trade, we know we have proponents and opponents. Opponents of free trade actually argue that the trade agreements actually encourage businesses to move to countries with poor environmental and labor regulations. What do you have to say about that? That's number one. And do you think there's a risk that the small and less developed countries become a dumping ground, especially when it's in the implementation of the Africa Free Continental Trade, Ismaeel?
You know, Phyllis, that's actually a very good question, and also a very complex one. And, you know, so it would be hard to provide, you know, a very straightforward, concrete answer on that. But for sure, that is a risk that these least developed countries, they get exposed. And so really what should be done is regulations to put in place, you know, to kind of do the best possible to monitor this type of activity, to discourage such actions. And hopefully the net benefits of the African Trade Agreement, and by having proper investment in infrastructure and proper investment in institutions and capacity building, yeah, over time, that is the way to counter, you know, such practices over the long run. Certainly it won't come overnight, and these things are hard to combat, but I think a very concerted effort has to be made in order for that to really be achieved.
Thank you so much, Ismaeel. I know we'll continue being with you together while we are continuing with the discussion. We know the ratification of the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement by African countries is very important. So think about the private sector. What is the role of the private sector? Because we know there's so many projects that go to the government sector, and we know how much the private sector can boost the African regional value chain, because a lot has been invested, and every private company wants to give their best when it comes to goods and services. So as we continue with the discussion, you can ponder on that, and then maybe you will share later. Thank you so much, Ismaeel, for such an insightful presentation, especially as an economist. That's really vital. Thank you so much, Ismaeel. So as we continue with our discussion, I'll go back to Anita. Anita, could you go to the trivia again?
Oh, I think Anita's dropped. Maybe
Okay.
Tembela should be joining in.
Okay, Tembela, could you do that for us?
Okay, could we just proceed? Thank you, Felista. I think we will get them back when they're available. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So before further ado, I know there are some questions or some discussion that are going on in our chat box. And in case you've just joined us, please go through the chat box and share with us what you have when it comes to this series, especially the pros and cons on the free continental trade agreement, especially when you're talking about the developing countries and developed countries when it comes to the balance and their role in making sure that there is economic efficiency in terms of really improving the economic status of Africa. So before further ado again, I will take this pleasure now to welcome our third guest, who is Modesta Nsowah-Adu, who is a lawyer. And he is specifically specialized in world trade. So if you're there with us, Modesta, could you please continue? Welcome.
Hi, thank you, Felista. And unfortunately, I'm not a he, I'm a she. So I just wanted to make that correction.
Thank you so much. Sorry.
No problem. I realize we are far lost of time, but Dr. Ismaeel and the other guests have already taken us through the general idea on the AfCFTA. So what I will do is just give our guests a general overview of what free trade agreements entail when we talk about free trade, because I think probably it would have been a good idea to have given them that general overview of what a free trade agreement is before the other panelists came in, but that's all right. It will still, I think it still suffices. So when we talk about free trade agreements, which the African Continental Free Trade is basically an agreement between two or more countries where the countries agree on certain obligations that affect trade in goods and services, and then protection for investors and intellectual property rights, among many other things. So when we talk about free trade, it's not just about trading goods. Services are also part of free trade agreements. And like our second panelist spoke about the second phase of negotiations under the AfCFTA, which would include other areas, including investments and intellectual property rights. So basically, there are some barriers to trade, which basically free trade agreements seeks to remove, and then that is where the liberalization comes in. So basically, there are two main major barriers to trading among countries. The first one is tariff, or what we commonly know as custom duties. And that is the financial charge or tax that you pay on imported goods. The second type of limitation or restriction to trade is what we call non-tariff barriers or quantitative restrictions. And these are measures that countries usually put in place that limits the quantity of goods that may be imported or exported. For instance, probably a country like Ghana could put a quota on the quantity of cocoa products that they could export, or probably any other food that they import. So put a restriction, probably you could not export more than probably 1 million tons of cocoa out of the country, and that would constitute a quantitative restriction. So basically for the advantages, I think Dr. Ismaeel has already taken us through most of them. We can talk about the fact that free trade agreements, they increase greater economic growth. And that's, like he rightly said, many developing countries, they have made strong gains both in their gross domestic products in more holistic metrics like the Human Development Index. And then it basically stems from the fact that when countries trade among themselves, they are able to gain what the economists call comparative advantage. So countries concentrate more on specializing on producing goods and services that they have an advantage in. So if, like Adam Smith spoke about, when if you have an advantage or you have knowledge in probably making shoes, you concentrate on making shoes and probably buy clothes from someone else with expertise, and that's and not waste so much time and resources trying to make the other. So what happens is that when this happens, consumers are able to benefit from lower prices because free trade creates an international market for goods and services with greater competition among producers and services. You also have exports increase from trade, and that also can boost economic growth. So you can also have fair treatment. Basically, there are two core principles that guide free trade agreements among countries. And the first being national treatment, and the other being the principle of non-discrimination. So for the principle of non-discrimination, countries under free trade agreements, basically they agree not to discriminate among goods or services coming in from other countries into their markets. For the principle of for national treatment, they are obliged to treat goods and services within their countries the same way as they treat domestic producers or domestic service suppliers. And so when this happens, it also it makes market competition fairer in like the countries, and it's a way of improving foreign direct investment and employment creation in both goods and services. It also boosts the creation of jobs through this means. Free trade also has the benefits of helping small and medium-sized businesses thrive through the creation of a single market. So the elimination of import duties opens up trading activities to small businesses and regional markets. And so small and medium-sized businesses within the region are able to have access to a larger market pool, which boosts their production. I'll just delve into probably a few of the cons that Dr. Ismaeel has already spoken about, quite a number. The first being that there's less revenue from countries because, like I said, through liberalization, barriers to trade like custom duties are done away with. So most governments, they make a lot of revenue and their ports through custom duties and through liberalization. When most of these are gradually reduced or done away with, then the revenue that they gain from custom duties and taxes at the ports, they sort of lose out on that. And a second disadvantage to free trade will have to be on threat to intellectual property. It's just a two-sided because free trade has the benefits of making countries have easier access to technological advancement, and in the same way, it poses a threat to intellectual property rights because when imports are free traded, domestic producers are often able to copy the products and sell them as knockoff without fear of any legal repercussions. So unless there are stringent measures under the intellectual property laws and enforcement, then protection for export companies becomes a problem. And then another issue has to do with competition for smaller sectors. I already mentioned that it could serve as an avenue for small and medium-scale enterprises to thrive, but in other ways through the increased competition, smaller sectors or producers may find it difficult to compete because bigger companies or bigger producers, they may have the advantage of being able to produce on larger scales and so enjoy economies of scale, and that might affect small scale producers. So then we come to an important question that usually people ask. I know there's a lot of excitement about the African Continental Free Trade. We as Africans, we're excited and the whole world is watching to see how it goes. And the question that for those of us in trade law, and I think most of economists and trade policy experts are asking, how effective have African trade agreements been in the past? How effective is this going to be? How effective in general are free trade agreements? Because there's a proliferation of a lot of free trade agreements out there. And usually for Africa, you could have agreements like the AGOA, African Growth and Opportunity Act. And usually these agreements are there, they look good on paper, but then the question is, are they effective? Do those who are intended to benefit, do they really benefit from it? So to ensure effectiveness or effective implementation of the African Continental Free Trade, there is a need for effective implementation of the rules and regulations. We have the protocol on goods, there's a protocol on trade and services, and then there are further negotiations on other areas that are coming in. And so to make the AfCFTA more effective, there will have to be effective implementation of these rules. The rules on the dispute settlement mechanism will have to be efficient to aid both investors and producers and all stakeholders involved when there are issues. If there's effective dispute settlement mechanism in place, I think that could also strengthen it. And then the next will be effective use.
Modesta, you have only 1 minute, sorry.
Okay, so effective use of information. Information is very vital, and so that is where sessions like this come in. So are the people who are supposed to benefit, do they have the right information? If you take, for instance, issues of informal cross-border trade, which you have most women and young people involved in, do they know the rules on transparency? Do they know the right custom duties or tariffs that they are supposed to pay at their borders? Because like I mentioned, when you take like informal cross-border trade, most one of the major problems that has been found in our borders with women engaging in informal cross-border trade is exploitation by custom officials.
Start my classes in advance.
You need the wrong mic.
Modesta, could you unmute yourself? Sorry, I will try. We cannot hear you.
Oh, okay. I think someone interrupted. Okay, so I was talking about the effective use of information out there. So governments and stakeholders would have to do more engagement. Let domestic and producers be aware of the benefits that they seek to enjoy from the AfCFTA, and that will include both the formal and informal sections of trade. And that is the only way that they will be able to take advantage of the many benefits that the AfCFTA seeks to provide. So I think, okay, so let me touch down on one of the also major issues to make the AfCFTA effective will be on the rules of origin. And rules of origin basically defines the conditions that a product must satisfy to be deemed as originating in the countries for which the preferential access is being sought. And so for rules of origin tend to be an indirect way of been very restrictive on trade because you would have them. There are stringent or more rigorous processes that producers will have to go through to satisfy the requirements under the rules of origin. And so it's one area that we could look at. So we don't make it too overly rigorous or like too stringent, because usually for producers and traders to go through to qualify for under these the rules of origin, they have to go through very expensive accounting measures that most of them may not be able to afford or do not even know about. So the rules of origin is one of the areas that we could look at to make the AfCFTA more effective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Modesta, for your presentation. As a lawyer, I know there are many things you'd love to share with us, but because of time, we had to cut you short, especially in your presentation. So I understand the Africa Free Continental Free Trade Area aims to reduce tariffs among members and covers policies, areas such as trade facilitation and services, as well as regulatory measures such as sanitary standards and technical barriers of trade. We understand that the barriers of trade create a lot of opportunities for political corruption, and many opponents of African Free Continental Trade that are actually saying that powerful interest groups are actually the beneficiaries. So what do you have to say about this, Modesta, especially when people think, you know, this the benefit is for pave way for political corruption, as well as powerful interest groups are actually the beneficiaries. In Tanzania, we say the normal mwananchi, the normal citizen of the country might not be benefiting from this. As a lawyer, in that perspective, what do you have to say about this, Modesta?
Well, I think the answer to that is already I already indicated that in my presentation. To erase or do away with that perception, it would all have to go down with engagement and then information dissemination. Are people aware of the benefits under AfCFTA? Are they aware how they can access any of these benefits? Are they aware of the trading opportunities? Are there as small and medium scale enterprises? Are women involved in informal cross-border trade? Are they aware of the provisions under AfCFTA? Are they aware of the protection, the AfCFTA rules, how they can benefit? So it all comes down to information and then stakeholder engagement. So that is why sessions like this are very important. You get young people, you get people who are supposed to benefit from the AfCFTA. There's no way you can benefit from a system if you don't know what your rights and privileges are. So if people know more about the AfCFTA, they know on how they can access the benefits and then tap into the many potentials within the AfCFTA, then it can be beneficial. If not, then we will still have our politicians hijacking the system and then making it all about themselves, which isn't supposed to be so.
Thank you so much, Modesta. I know time is not on our side. And as I had indicated earlier, we have the Q&A session now where we allow our participants to ask questions. Just to give you a preview of what we have talked about today, we are talking about the pros and cons of African Free Continental Trade Agreement. And our first speaker was Marie Providence Magangu, who is a gender trade expert in the Africa Free Continental Free Trade Area Secretariat in the African Union. And she kind of gave us a milestone of the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. And we had our second speaker, who is Dr. Ismaeel Tharwat, if that's the correct pronunciation. He's an economist, especially business cluster, AU-EU Cooperation Hub. He has shared a lot, especially what we have to learn and what Africa is bringing to the table when it comes to bringing African member countries to join the Africa Free Continental Trade Area. And we have now Modesta, who is actually a lawyer who was sharing with us a little bit of Africa Free Continental Trade and what policies and laws that go hand in hand, especially in tariffs and balancing the trade between countries. Thank you so much, our speakers and everybody who was listening to us. I know we have one champion. who is supposed to speak to us today. So I will seek guidance from the leaders. Could you please, David, are you there?
Yes, Felista.
Yes, so I had really jumped to the Q&A and forgot our champion because I was looking at time. So is it possible for our champion to go ahead before the Q&A?
Yes, I think he will be brief. I believe he won't take really long. So he could just come through, then we can jump to the Q&A. Let's give our youth more time to ask the questions to Miss Marie and also Ismaeel and of course Modesta. Yes.
Sure.
You could call him in. I think Dambuza should be around. Yeah.
Dambuza, are you around? I think I cannot hear him well. He's breaking. Can you hear me?
No, he's breaking. So I think maybe.
So maybe we could, maybe we could invite him later in between the Q&A. Maybe he could come in if that's not a problem, so that we can save some time. David, could you look into what is wrong with his network as I look into the chat box and also help answer the questions? So literally the mode of asking the questions will be raising your hand, and because of time, let's make use of the chat box. We have experts with us, so if you put your question across and if you're not able to get a chance to ask because of time, please just note down your question in the chat box and I'll be running through the chat box to check if there's anything there. So feel free to come in the chat box, and I already have 2 hands already, so I'll be balancing. If I see you're from Tanzania, 2 people from Tanzania, I'll pick one. I'm not being what is it called? I've forgotten the word, English word, but I will see. If you're coming from one country and you're 2 people, I will only allow 1 person just because of time. So before further ado, Peter, are you there? You can go ahead and ask your question. Peter Ngomba? I think Peter is not ready.
Hello.
Ivan, are you there?
This
Ivan Atuyambe, you're free to ask your question.
Hello, this is Peter. Please, can you hear me?
Yes, Peter.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes, go ahead.
Please, my question is not
you have only
not
30
any
seconds. I'm so
specific,
sorry. You have only 1 minute.
Okay, so my question is about, I think the representative from the Secretariat talked something about a currency between 2024 to 28. I did not really get that, but I want to understand how that is going. How can we really tap in the benefits, knowing that there are 14 African countries in Francophone Africa that do not really have that monetary sovereignty, and trade being something important without a medium of exchange? How do we really tap in or solve that problem? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. So I think, Marie, you've gotten that. So I'll take one more question before we invite the speakers to answer. Ivan, are you there at Tuyambe?
Very much around. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Fsta, for your wonderful moderation. And thank you for the wonderful, knowledgeable speakers, Modesta and Marie. I have 2 small questions. The first one goes to Marie. It's about the rules of origin. So the rules of origin is, I'm not so much of a trade policy expert, but from what I understand, they aim at ensuring that the goods that are subsidized or allowed to be traded on free trade basis are those with the highest possible local content in them. And I worry about how this will also be a barrier to trade within the continent, because when we go to value addition and manufacturing, we might still lack technology and parts or ingredients for even light manufacturing industry. So if we apply the usual rules of origin restrictions, I worry that maybe we will only trade in what we can produce in the continent, and this is so limited because the manufacturing capacity of the continent, the technology, the equipment is still not at a competitive level. So I would love to see how this question will be addressed within the rules of origin under the CFTA and yet not limit trade. There's some magic I don't get around this. The second question I will ask later. Let me give a chance for others. Thank you.
Thank you so much for being considerate, Ivan. I know that in the chat box, there's so many questions that are coming in. And if you are one of our experts, Marie, Ismaeel, Modesta, and the rest from ICOYACA or anybody who is in the team, please help answering as well so that we can save time. And in case it's not clear, please we'll do that and ask again. So Marie, I think the two questions are directed to you. One was about the currency. How will it affect the 14 Francophone countries? And because they don't have monetary sovereignty, I think that was the key question. If I'm not right, you correct me. And then we have the second question that comes from Ivan. It talks about the rule of origin and restrictions and goods that have subsidies. And he talked about the local content and the barrier to trade, especially when you talk about the value added in terms of manufacturing, lack of technology, and all that. So Marie, are you there to answer the two questions? And then I'll welcome the two people who have raised their hands. Welcome, Marie.
Yes, thank you, Felicia. And I mean, I would like to get more clarification on the first question about the currency issue. So I will delve into the second question on rules of origin, then I'll come back to you so that you can explain a little bit more what you mean. So yes, Ivan, that's a very, very interesting question. I believe one of the speakers already clarified what rules of origin are, right? So they set criteria criteria that must be met for a product to qualify for tariff preferences under the AfCFTA. If you like, they confer an economic nationality for a product and therefore determine the level of processing that needs to happen for a product to, qualify under the AfCFTA. One thing that you need to keep in mind is that the rules of origin are not so inflexible as to not taking into account the fact that some of the inputs may not be available on the continent, right? So it gives room, depending of course on the product that you are trading, to source your input outside the continent.
David, could you confirm, is the network okay?
Yes. Marie is very audible. It's okay.
May I proceed?
I think Marie could proceed, yes.
Okay, thank you. So as I was saying, that it's possible that you may need a specific input for your product that is not necessary, that is not available on the continent. So there's a possibility that the criteria set by the rules of origin allow you to source that product and still have your
Marie?
Germany, transform it into a drinking coffee or a product based on coffee, then bring it back to the continent and say, no, it's a made in Africa product. No, that's not how it works. The understanding is that the substantial transformation of the product must have happened within the continent. So there's still room for you to put, if there's the input is, and of course this is subject to the rules of origin. This is just an example. If your foreign input is about, let's say 3%, and it's still within the threshold of non-originating product as provided by the rules of origin and the rules of origin under the AfCFTA, your product will still qualify. But what the AfCFTA is trying to prevent is that you make very little value addition to your product, and then use it and still benefit from the AfCFTA preferences. The rules of origin are meant to promote diversification within the continent using African originated inputs. That's the main purpose of the agreement. I hope I was able to provide some clarification on that. Now, Felista, could you kindly remind me what the first question was?
Yeah, the first question is, I think I just forgot the name. I hope I'm correct on this. The participant.
The name is Peter.
Yes, Peter, welcome, Peter. Could you please ask it again? Maybe I didn't say.
So my question is, if we are having a single market, I think having a single currency has been the plan with some of the reforms Gaddafi was trying to contribute to put in place with a central bank and a monetary fund for Africa. How does the AfCFTA factor that in? Because for the 14 African countries that still have this kind of neo-colonial monetary cooperation with francs, will it not have an effect on their benefits of the trade in the long term?
That's a very interesting question, Peter, and thank you for it. As you would know, the AfCFTA is just part of the bigger agenda, as I had explained earlier, of the economic and integration and political integration of the continent. So a monetary union, yes, is contemplated, but not at this level. With regards to the fact that we have so many African currencies that are actually not convertible, in the sense that you cannot take the Ghana cedi and maybe exchange it for to Kenya shilling. So for instance, with the Naira, thank you. That convertibility does not exist. And that's why the Secretariat in collaboration with in collaboration with the AfCFTA Secretariat developed what we call the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System that allows traders to still use their local currency. So if you are in Nigeria, right, and you need when you're trading in a specific good, and you want, let's say, there's a transaction that is required between you in Nigeria and your counterpart in Namibia, for instance, you are not necessarily required to exchange your Naira into USD or pounds or euros in order to make that transfer the funds to your Namibian counterpart. You can use the payment and settlement system that will then work out the convertibility between the Naira and the currency in Namibia, right? So that at least that reduces the cost that you would have to incur should you resort to exchanging your currency into dollars than paying into dollars. That's the main aim of PAPS. But of course, as you rightly pointed out, the whole issue of the multiple currencies within the continent, this is a macroeconomic issue that will of course be addressed right at the right time. But for now, within the framework of the AfCFTA, a solution has been devised to make sure that traders are actually able to use their local currencies. They do not have to incur costs, exchange rate costs, in addition to all the other costs that may be related to cross-border trade within the AfCFTA framework. I hope I answered your question.
Peter,
thank you very well. Thank you very much. You did well.
Thank you so much, Marie, for answering those questions. I know there are so many questions in our chat box, so I will go as we go on with the people that have raised their hands. Our experts in trade could please go through them and actually answer them one by one as we continue with people who have raised their hands, so that because of time, we might not be able to go through all of them. So I would like to welcome Rashid Rajab. Are you there? Could you please, and after Rashid, we'll have Samuel Owuya, and then we will go back to the chat box because I only have like 2 hands raised that have not asked their questions. Rashid, and then Samuel will go after Rashid. Rashid, are you there? Could you please ask your question?
Yes, I'm here.
Welcome.
Oh, my question is I've seen we are speaking about a free trade agreement. And so I want to know how the free trade will be effective to African, while some of our friend countries like Mozambique, Somalia, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Central African Republic are still on conflicts. And I want to know how this will be effective if some of our friends are still fighting. So how can it be effective?
Thank you so much, Rashid. That question has been put across, and I guess Marie, Dr. Ismaeel, and Modesta, one of you could answer that. So we'll go to Samuel before we answer all the questions. Samuel, are you there? Thank you so much, Rashid. Your question will be answered. Samuel? Samuel? Ouya? Are you there, Samuel? I think Samuel is not here, and I think I've finished with the people that have raised their hands, and maybe I will go through one question in the chat just to add up to that. So there are so many questions here, but I'll read through all of them just to make sure that maybe they can be answered. So one question is, how do we go about letting SMEs know about the opportunities of the Africa Free Continental Free Trade Area? That's Noel from Malawi, I think. And then we have, how can youth in agribusiness space get bank guarantees for from investors willing to invest in their projects? That's the third question. And how is Africa Free Continental Free Trade Area, how does it create the opportunity for youth across the continent who are into similar business to form conglomerates? Thanks. And then we have, of course, someone is asking Marie, what is the criteria? What is the percentage for the local content? I think we'll go by those, and the rest, I think those are the only questions asked in our chat boxes. So Marie and Dr. Ismaeel and Modesta, who would like to answer the question on free trade agreement, how is it fair, especially to countries that are in war? For example, our colleague mentioned Mozambique, Somalia, Central Republic, they are in war. How do we say the free trade area agreement is fair and yet other countries are in war?
Okay, thank you. I think I was already answering that in the chat session. I didn't know you were going to call it out. So because of time, I couldn't go through. There was one of the benefits of trade that I intended to talk about. Aside the economic benefits of free trade, the political aspects of free trade is another benefit to when countries trade among themselves. There is enough research to prove that when countries trade among themselves, they are less likely to be conflicts among themselves because they both know the benefits of trade. And then another thing is knowledge sharing. And so when countries come together, like they have under the African Continental Free Trade, they share information, and that includes best democratic practices. And so these are issues that flow around the leaders, and they are more likely to encourage each other to have stable economies, because trade only thrives in stabilized economies. If the country is in conflict, nobody would want to engage in trade with you. We have recently, we all know of the issue in Russia and Ukraine. They are losing out on a lot of their trade agreements and then businesses. And so countries are more likely to encourage each other to be stable, or like not probably, let me say, revolt or not encourage coups or coup d'etats among themselves, but to encourage the tenets of best democratic practices, because these are practices that encourage trade and economic development among themselves. And so, yes, so with countries that's with some of the conflict-prone areas, one of the benefits that they could get from the African Continental Free Trade will be countries with more stable democracies, rubbing up the knowledge and then the benefits to having stable countries, stabilized economies, and impact these knowledge and benefits to these other countries. They learn from it, and then so it's one of the benefits. The political aspect is one of the benefits to free trade agreements.
I hope, thank you so much, Modesta, for answering that. I hope our colleague who asked that question has been answered. If not, please go to the chat box and you'll get further clarification. So Modesta, you can type in something that was not understood by our colleague. So I'm welcoming Dr. Ismaeel Tharwat. Are you there? Maybe you could answer a few questions, especially in terms of how do Africa Free Continental Trade create opportunity for youth across the continent with similar businesses specifically. And also you can talk about the agribusiness space, getting bank guarantees to invest in the project. Is that possible when it comes to, when we are talking about the Africa Free Continental Free Trade Area? Dr. Ismaeel, could you chip in?
Yes. Hi, Felicity. Yes, and very interesting questions for sure. And I'd like to thank Modesta for her very thorough answer just now about the piece, because it's very important for the future of the African Union overall. On these questions about regarding SMEs, the opportunities for SMEs, for entrepreneurs, well, the whole idea, I guess one of the main ideas of this type of African trade agreement is to encourage more commercial and economic activity. And so by having more opportunities to export your products and import other products and inputs, which can then help you, provide more products and services to all across Africa. And so I think it's a two-part answer to that, where surely governments have to help and incentivize specific industries where they find potential, so that the youth and young or entrepreneurs in general and business people can then direct their energy into those directions where there is a comparative advantage. And we're also counting on the ability and energy of the youth. So where possible, human capacity building training and exposure, so that they are aware of the types of opportunities that are there, and then for them to use their energy to take initiative and to fill the gaps. And it can't be a fully hand-to-mouth situation. The government can provide direction, but surely we're going to need this lovely active youth population that we have here in Africa to really take initiative and take ownership of their own future too, in as much as possible. And regarding the agribusiness space, for sure, now the African Trade Agreement will open lots of opportunities, specifically in agriculture and in manufacturing, because then it allows all the countries to import, specific inputs that you weren't able to input before, hopefully also at a better costs than before, so you can have value add. But this also applies to the agriculture sector, because you can then hopefully access technologies and products which can then help you also create whatever initiative that you want to create. About guarantees specifically, I think what's going to happen is, like I said, governments should provide incentives, and then it's going to be a country to country, sector by sector situation. It's hard to really have a one simple answer for that type of question.
Yes, you're absolutely right, Ismaeel. When it comes to incentives, it really depends with the country. How are they ready to support their youth when it comes to agribusiness? Because we know, for example, in Tanzania, agriculture is one of the #1 economy that build up the economy of Tanzania. So it's how the government will actually support these young people. And also, it also depends with young people, how are they ready to improve their agribusiness knowledge and skills to convince the government to fund them, because literally you have to convince somebody to fund you, and it's really a challenge. And I remember you talked about innovation, you talked about technology. How far do you go with agriculture and the current technology, and how do you convince someone that when this is introduced, it will really be beneficial than what is existing now in your own country? Thank you so much, Ismaeel. I know there are so many questions. I know Cynthia has raised their hand. Cynthia, could you please type in your question if you don't mind? Because of time, maybe we might not get time to listen to you. Could you please type in your question? And then Ismaeel is here, Modesta is here, and also Marie. And Marie, please, could you please answer the question in the chat box about the local content? How much is local content? Somebody asked the percentage or something. What is the percentage for the local content? What is the criteria? Could you please chip in the chat box? I know I would really love to let you speak, but because of time, I will now hand over to David to actually wind up. And before David comes in, I would really like to take this opportunity to thank everybody who joined us today. I know we might not have been perfect today, but we tried our best to deliver. And I hope the objectives of the pros and cons about the Africa Continental Free Trade Area were beneficial to you. So thank you so much, Marie. Thank you so much, Dr. Ismaeel. Thank you so much, Modesta. And we are so sorry for our champion. Because of internet, we couldn't get through, but we really appreciate your presence. And we are all learning. This is a continuous process. We're all learning about the Africa Free Continental Trade. And it's the role of the youth to actually take the message out there. I know we complain too much sometimes, and we don't take that responsibility to educate others and educate ourselves about the Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. So David, come in, and I think you'll get also a chance to thank our guests and everybody who joined us today. David, welcome.
Thank you. Maybe if you could allow me, break the protocol a bit, Felista. Let me just give Marie and Dr. Ismaeel to just, and of course Modesta, to just say their, in 1 minute, their conclusive remarks. Then of course I can invite Mr. Ivan to also, before I eventually we wrap up. I don't know if that's okay, Felista.
That's really okay. It's my bad. I was supposed to actually let them do that, but I thought because of time, maybe I would cut them short. But thank you so much. I think as a part of the team, I think it's allowed, and really you're welcome to say your conclusive remarks, Marie and Dr. and also Modesta. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Felista. Do I have the floor?
Yes, sure. In no particular order. Thank you.
Thank you. So I wanted to just thank you, of course, on behalf of the AfCFTA Secretariat, for allowing us to be part of this very, very, very important initiative to inform and engage our brothers and sisters about the AfCFTA, what it is, how it works, and what it means for them and for the entire continent. Of course, I would like to reassure everyone that the AfCFTA Secretariat remains committed to engage with the youth on AfCFTA related issues, and this is timely given the fact that a protocol on women and youth in trade will be negotiated in the coming months. So we are looking forward to your feedback regarding some of the constraints as youth that youth traders are facing when trading across borders, but also reflecting on where they see the solutions, where the solutions lie, and how they consider them or project them practically. We remain available, of course, to continue working and engaging with you. Thank you so much. This has been fun for me because I love talking about AfCFTA, and we dream of a day, not we dream, we know that the AfCFTA will allow us to eat AfCFTA, to dress AfCFTA, to wear AfCFTA. That's what we are aiming for. And we know that Africa's youth is strategic to driving that process. Thank you very much. And I wish you all an excellent evening.
Thank you, Marie. I know we'll keep engaging. Yes, Doctor Ismaeel.
Yeah, thank you, David. Well, I'd like to just thank everyone for the opportunity to be here with you. And it's always a pleasure to get the chance to be part of such important discussions. And I am happy to learn from always the questions and comments and feedback. Hopefully that will better my thought process and thinking. And I encourage everyone to continue learning and being proactive in their own ways as well. And so that we can have the best possible outcome across Africa moving forward. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Ismaeel. I know we'll keep in touch. I will get back to you via email. Yes, thank you. Modesta, come through.
Okay, so I would like to say thank you to the organizers for having me on board. And I would like to also say that from, as we realized from the session, there are a lot of interest in the various aspects of the AfCFTA and how they benefit different sections of the populace or the youth. And so we should have more engagement sessions like this to dissect the various protocols, like the trading services, trading goals, even the ongoing negotiation processes, and so that more people can be educated or informed about what benefits they stand to get from the AfCFTA. There are a lot of questions on rules of origin and trade facilitation. We can have like sessions dedicated specifically to these special areas where people ask questions, and then we educate them on the provision, the AfCFTA provisions. And then, so I think in conclusion, we should all be ambassadors of the AfCFTA. We are the ones that will get people who are not so knowledgeable about the free trade, the AfCFTA. We should be global ambassadors. We should promote it. We should encourage trade under the agreement. And then, that's just it.
Thank you so much. Before Leadership Ivan comes in, Dambuza, could you just say final small words? I know you had a challenge. Are you there with us, Dambuza?
Hello, Alan, and
Yes.
hello, Africa.
Just briefly, yes.
Okay, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and I'm really sorry. We've had network problems, but as ICOYACA Zimbabwe, we have done a lot in trying to engage with several actors, and we are really happy that the AfCFTA Secretariat is here with us. We are looking forward to work with it, as well as to make sure that the AfCFTA Secretariat also recognizes us as country chapters and help us to understand more and more about the AfCFTA, because here it is me and my colleagues and other people who we've just invited, but there are many people who do not really understand about this. So we really expect to have more opportunities to raise awareness, as well as to disseminate information among the youth, women, informal cross-border traders, etc. And we really hope that the AfCFTA is going to work with our country, as well as other countries' chapters in making sure that the information gets to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dambuza. I know Maria has heard that. Yes, Ismaeel, before Leadership Ivan comes through, I see your hand up. Is there any last remarks that you'd forgotten?
Yes, sorry, okay. I know we're trying to wrap up, but just building off what Modesta just said, a very important point, it would be nice to also bring in different stakeholders from the business community and from outside of, academia and just the inside of the African Union, to also get their perspective, to hopefully learn more and to guide us in our future policy making or actions that we take as a collective, hopefully in Africa. But thank you again for this session. It was wonderful.
Thank you. Yes, Leadership Ivan, you could come through before we wrap up. Yes.
Okay, David, I think I already said what I should have said today, but again, allow me to thank our wonderful expositors for sharing their experiences and their knowledge. As you recall, in our study of 2021 on measuring the knowledge and awareness and interest of young people in Africa on the AfCFTA, we found that interest is too high, but knowledge is too low. And again, I see it manifesting in these sessions every time and again, which is a sign that we need to do this more and more. And I propose that we also go beyond the generic and start looking at topical, specific, spending time on specific details, as they have always said in the old days and now, that the devil is always in the details. So we need to open this detail and make sure that we go deeper. So I hope that in our next series, we can pick a specific point. For example, rules of origin. What does it mean? Why is it? And why will it work? And etc. That is one. Secondly, I also want to note again, as we have always said, that the AfCFTA is a game changer in terms of building the next Africa, or the Africa that we want. Why? Because in the same room, same year, the agreement establishing the free trade area was signed. Also, the protocol on free movement of persons was signed. But until now, only 30 countries have signed. And out of these 30, only Rwanda, Niger, Sao Tome, and the Principe and Mali have ratified fully this free persons movement protocol. These are only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 countries. And when you look at the list, they are not significant countries that have signed the free movement of persons protocol. And I think Marie mentioned about, there was a question around the balancing between the major economies and the upcoming economies on the continent. When I look at the free movement protocol, those who have signed are small economies, upcoming economies. The big ones have not signed. What does this mean? To me, I know that the goods and services are moved by people, not goods and services moving people. People move because of taking the goods and also looking for the goods. So the opportunity I see in the AfCFTA is that it has already moved. You have seen that out of the 55, or 54 have signed, and a significant 43 have already ratified and deposited the instruments. This provides us the opportunity to say that the AfCFTA is going to be the catalyst for movement of persons. Forget about the protocol of movement of persons. If goods move, people move automatically. So young people, let's make the AfCFTA our thing. If our goods are cleared, we will move with them. So this is the opportunity I see for Africa to move forward and take the advantage of what is moving. And I think also finally, to invite all the colleagues that are here, that we know that Africa needs partners, and there is the AU-EU partnership. And I think there's a colleague from the youth, the AU-EU hub for young people. We are preparing an AU-EU youth trade facilitation and integration experience forum, which Morot can talk about a bit more. But we want to see what are the experiences that have been informing European integration that Africans can borrow from, and also Europeans can borrow from us, so that we look at, for example, from the economic point of view, the social point of view, and the transport and mobility point of view, what's been like and what can we learn from the EU, from the young people's perspective, particularly, to advance the one African market. So I want to end there, and thank you once again. And David, please share a bit more on the exchange forum so that people can book their calendar, invite also people We would love to see some case studies on tariffs in the AU and how this, especially with these negotiations ongoing, how young people can prepare enough to benefit from or influence the negotiations based on the economic integration process and experience in the European Union, etc. David, thank you once again, and Marie, Modesta, and the other comrade who was speaking, I want to check the name.
Ismaeel.
Ismaeel. Yes,
Yes.
Ismaeel. Thank you so much for spending your precious evening with African young people. And Maria and I were chatting, and we are thinking about some sort of more detailed engagements, maybe in form of fireside chats, to go deeper on some of these topical issues that will seem to be small, but will affect how we interact with and benefit from the agreement if we don't have those details of knowledge. I thank you once again. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Leadership Ivan, and thank you, colleagues, for staying on the call. We are still 49 strong from the start, and I know the number was bigger, but I just should say thank you so much. What Leadership Ivan noted on the engagement, the EU-AU exchange forum we are working on, of course, the idea or the end goal is mainly to ensure that we synergize as African youth and European youth. You may very well know that that when trade is booming in Africa, then Europe will also be able to benefit. The same applies to Europe. Europe actually is the biggest consumer of African goods in that sense. But also, when you look at the AfCFTA, the way it is designed, for us to be able to fully harness the opportunities of the AfCFTA, we need partners. We need to work with these partners. And currently, there is what is known as third parties. So Europe and Americas and Asia, those are third-party countries. So for us to be able to get these youth in the same room to discuss their ideas on trade and how they can actually go about it, and also the challenges around it, it's very important for the AfCFTA implementation processes. And of course, the end goal is, number one, to synergize. Number two, also to create markets for our youth, because we shall have chambers of commerce officials from both regions, from both continents in that engagement session, and different other players. And of course, Marie, since you're already here, and of course, Ismaeel, we are going to work together to ensure that we actually make this a success in that sense. So colleagues, thank you so much. I know we will keep engaging. For those of us who are actually joining us for the first time, kindly follow us on our Twitter handle at ICOYACA. We're also on LinkedIn and Instagram, and also on, of course, our website, which of course is the ULEAD Africa website. Those links have been shared on the chat. Kindly keep following us, keep engaging. The series will always be there, and you will be notified as you have actually been notified today. And let's join in numbers. And for those who would want to be part of the structures of ICOYACA at country level, the links have also been shared on how to join. We will be connecting you there, because again, I would want to emphasize the implementation of the AfCFTA is limited to member states. So we actually encourage our youth at each member state level to participate, because that is the only way we will also foster accountability from our government side who are meant to implement. Then, and that is how that is why we have country chapters, mainly to mobilize and engage our youth, but also act as an accountability mechanism. We need to be able to show the world what our governments are doing in terms of youth inclusion, but also in the implementation processes. That is the advantage, or that is why we have the ICOYACA chapters. So thank you so much. Thank you once again. Let's meet again in the next Engage series. You'll be notified. And the idea of having topical issues or themes for discussion, that is also going to be taken seriously with, of course, the AfCFTA Secretariat, so that we can have you capacitated in specifically the PAPs, how the PAPs works, and different other rules of origin and so on. We will always engage you on that. Thank you so much, and have a good night. You enjoy our ULEAD Africa song that we always play at the end of the series. Amazing youth with creative ideas came up with this amazing song. Just enjoy it. Yes, Komi, you could now take it up from there.
Asante sana na ilikuwa ni presentation nzuri. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Kwame, are you there?
I am. Thank you, David. And thank you, everyone.
Okay. Could you just start it?
Changing.
So we can't hear the sound. Could you just get maybe the ULIT video? Yes, the video.
Break dividend into opportunities.
But also young people, as being the largest population, they are our biggest asset.
Because the richness of nations is not in stones, but in its people.
It's never been more important to develop our youth into confident and transformational leaders that can navigate Africa through the incoming economic and political climates. Africa's youth are faced with growing concerns about how to thrive in their purpose, and that's where Untitled Africa comes in. Founded in 2017, we are Africa's flagship youth leadership program, following the youth's greater demands in expanding our work from the East African community to the continent.
There are many challenges facing young people on the African continent. The biggest one of them is that each and every one of the young people in Africa have the desire to become a leader. I think investments should be made more to build the capacity of young people in Africa to become effective leaders.
Under globalization, the world is small. The whole world outside there has skills. We need to equip our youth with the requisite skills so that they participate properly, even in global interaction.
And this means that we need to do more to create economic opportunities and work opportunities for young people.
ULIT for me represents that opportunity for young people to first of all think about their problems collectively and then develop, if it be disruptive strategies to take action on addressing those challenges.
The summit, it's not just a 3 days or 4 or 5 days event for young people to come and chit-chat and go home. Whatever they are saying is influencing our one-year work, what we call the post-summit agenda.
With now more than 10,000 alumni and over 30 partners, and active partner-led work in all 5 major African regions, a One Young Africa is our vision.
We have a great vision. We're envisioning 150 delegates in person, 20,000 virtually, but this is not, to me, the only success indicator. The success indicator is ensuring that all these 20,000 young people virtually provide inputs and meaningfully engage throughout the conversation, and all their suggestions are then incorporated into our post-summit agenda.
Look at 2017, just East Africa coming together, and now thousands of African young people.
ULIT Summit 2021. We are proud to announce that we are going continental, coming together as a One Young Africa.
And we want actually to break the borders. The CFTA is here. We want African young people to come together under ULIT Summit platform, trade together across the borders, innovate together across the borders, and create jobs as well as prosper together.
That's what drove us to become, One Young Africa. We have the potential and the capacity to do so.
From 8th to 12th November 2021, we are hosting Africa's largest hybrid summer ever with ULIT Africa's patron, His Excellency Jakaya Mrisho Kikwete, former President of Tanzania, as Chief Convener. and Honorable Dr. Peter Matuki, the EAC Secretary General, as co-convener. The theme is The Future of Africa, Creating Jobs, Feeding and Housing the World's Youngest Continent.
I call upon policymakers, development partners, the private sector, media, civil society, and other stakeholders to be part of and support the East African community in convening this year's ULEAD Summit.
It will attract participation from all the partner states of the EAC and indeed the continent. I thank you. Asanteni sana. See you in Arusha. Tujenge vijana wetu.
Since 2017, ULEAD Summit, as popularly known, is jointly convened annually by the East African Community and MS Training Center for Development Cooperation in Arusha, Tanzania, in collaboration with a myriad of partners.
COVID-19 is both a blessing and a curse, equally.
We have seen how the COVID pandemic has hit very hard young people.
And this is why ULEAD Africa will bring together more than 15,000 people on a single platform, because travel is restricted, but more people come together through the internet, courtesy of COVID-19.
We are welcoming a virtual and physical audience from all African countries together on the same platform.
Nonetheless, COVID-19 has reduced the opportunities for young people. Young people have lost jobs, and COVID-19 pushes us beyond the boundary to innovate and create jobs that we have lost using COVID-friendly mechanisms such as online platforms, as well as increased cooperation between and among young people across the borders, especially under the CFTA, which regards that trade should happen beyond borders of any country.
The 2021 summit will be delivered in the form of thematic forums. The Under 40 Political Leaders Forum, which examines current representative democracy models. The Under 40 Business Leaders Forum assesses the existing environment for doing business.
So it is important to engage and involve youth from initial discussion about our drive to promote continental free trade area.
The Arusha debate is infused into your ULEAD Summit to generate insights into how to make social and economic development a reality.
Yes, so the Arusha debate is being convened by ourselves, MST-CDC. As you know, we're quite curious, but also propagate Pan-Africanism and knowledge that is homegrown and bred.
Arusha hosts a number of higher education institutions, and it's the right place for hosting the Arusha debate.